Hi, I'm Scotty. I service, repair and restore vintage and antique mechanical clocks. Welcome to Scotties Clock World. In this video you will learn an alternate way to polish clock pivots. The parts of the clock movement have been through the ultrasonic cleaner now. So we're going to get the parts ready to check the bushes and the pivots, how they fit, so we can see if we've got to do any additional bushing or not. I'll take the pieces apart here that we had them on bits of wire to keep them separate while they're in the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll put them into my foam block here. That one needs a bigger hole. The fly can go there. I think it's going to fit in, or is it tight? It's the fly. Going train parts. First wheel. Second wheel. And the escape wheel goes right up at the top. Remove those. And the four nuts that hold the plates together, we'll put them in there. Put them aside for a moment. We don't need those. Before we can check how the pivots fit in the bushes, we need to look at the pivots to see if they've got any wear marks on them. And how we do that is we run a thumbnail over the pivot and draw it backwards and forwards. And that way you can feel if there's any dents or marks on the pivot. That seems to be alright. However, we still polish the pivots, run over them. And you've probably seen me use I'll get my glove on, the popsicle stick method, which is popsicle stick with 1200 or 2000 mesh grit sandpaper on it, bent in the middle, little bit of masking tape as a hinge. And what we do, if we haven't got any serious grooves in the pivot, is we put one piece of the popsicle stick on either side, hold it over the top of the pivot relatively tightly, and then spin the wheel round. That'll take off any high spots that are hard to feel. Turn that round to the other side, it's newer. Line it up again. Spin it backwards and forwards. And you can see that's looking a little bit better. But today I'm going to show you a different way to do it. that is more efficient. Naturally, if you had big grooves in the pivots, we remove them on a lathe using a pivot file and a burnisher. But this is another method that's very efficient that you can use for polishing pivots if you haven't got big grooves on them and you don't have a lathe. I'll pop that back in there. And this is what we're going to use today. 3600 micro mesh, a sheet thereof, and a pin vise. 3600 micro mesh is equivalent to 2400 grit on the P scale for sandpaper, and it's very close to 8.4 micron is the size of the individual pieces on it. Right, we'll take one of our wheels. Probably that end. Open up our pin vise. Take one of our wheels. Loosen off the pin vise. Put the arbor inside and tighten it down. There's a close-up of the pivot. You can see there. This is the one that we checked before. It had got no deep grooves in it. So what we'll do is we'll roll a piece of the 3600 micro mesh over the pivot and then spin the pin vise. Spin the pin vise around. Take it off, have a look at it. Looking better. Do that again. Spin the pin vise, holding the micro mesh firmly over the pivot. Then come back and have a look. You can see that pivot is quite shiny and it's well polished. Now we'll reverse the wheel. Tighten down the pin vise again. Put a piece of micro mesh over it on both sides. And then spin the wheel backwards and forwards, holding the micro mesh tight. Take it off, have a look at it. That's looking better. Do it again. This brings the pivots up rather nicely. You can see there how shiny the pivot is, as opposed to the colours when they first started off. The two of them together and you can see the difference. The polished one, my right hand, the unpolished on the left hand. That's an alternate way to polish your pivots. So what I'll do now is I will work through all our wheels, polish the pivots, and then we'll come back and we'll check the pivots and the bushes and see if we need to do any rebushing. Now I'll use some 2400 micro mesh sheet to polish that arbor. do the same thing, wrap the micro mesh around it and rotate the pin vise, holding the micro mesh tight on the arbor. This will remove the very fine coating of rust that's on the arbor. Here we can see, looking a lot shinier than the arbor on the other end. Piece there, I will turn it round. We'll polish the other end of the arbor. Wrap the micro mesh round it, hold it tightly and spin the pin vise in either direction. Here we go, nice and shiny. Both ends of the arbor are now shiny. You can see the difference between the polished one and the unpolished one. You could use a popsicle stick method to polish the arbors, but the micro mesh is much finer and does a better job.